Welcome everybody to the Planning and Development Committee for today, the 1st of August. First of all, I just want to let you know there's been a little bit of a hiccup with the IT. So there's going to be a slight delay while we're fixing that. The officers on the top bench do need to be able to talk about the application that's coming up, and we really need this screen to be working. So apologies, there's going to be a little bit of a delay. But in the meantime, I'm going to just go through the welcome and the apologies, and we'll get that part of the business over and done with. Okay, I'm going to start by introducing the top table. We have Mr. David Niven on my right. Next to him we have Mrs. Anne Conliffe, myself, Mr. Jeff Fogg from the Legal Department, Vice Convener Bob Braun is next to him, and Danny Williams, and that's the top table. Can I ask if there are any apologies today?
Yes, Convener. We have apologies from Councillor Anderson, Councillor Barnacle, Councillor Drysdale, Councillor Jarvis, Councillor Waters, and we also have Councillor Robertson substituting for Councillor Wilson.
Okay, thank you. And can I ask the committee if there are any declarations of interest with any items that are before us today? No declarations, thank you. The minutes of the meeting of the 4th of July, can they be agreed? Agreed, thank you. Okay. There are some deputations today, and they're not for the first application for Bankfoot, but we do have a Mr. Lewis and a Mr. Menny here to answer any questions on that particular application if required. And we have some deputations for the application in Birnam. So are we agreed that we will hear those deputations? Agreed. Thank you. Okay, and if you wouldn't mind just bearing with us a little bit longer, we'll see if we can get the IT bit sorted out and we'll proceed. I believe these two are working. It's just if we can get this working, it's an awful lot easier as the officers are talking through the different pictures and different business. Just if we could get it working, that would be... If it's going to take a long time, then we'll progress quite quickly, but it was just to see if we could get them up and running. Okay, to proceed, the officers are going to sort of relocate themselves when they have to go through their application, and that will allow us to move forward. So, okay, so we will turn to the first item of business today, which is the application for Bankfoot, a formation of a borrow pit, vehicle access and track, storage yard and car parking, siting of auxiliary processing equipment, 2 portable buildings for office and canteen use, and associated works for a temporary period on land south of Loak Farm in Bankfoot. And I would ask Mrs. Conliffe to introduce the report.
Thank you, Convener. Just before I show the slides, if I could give an update to members. First of all, I'd like to draw members' attention to the final proposed condition, which is on page 27, condition 29. We've had a rethink on that one, and in conjunction with our colleagues in legal, we'd wish this condition to be deleted, but to be replaced with a requirement for a Section 75 legal agreement. It will achieve the same aim. So as a result of that, the paragraph on legal agreements would state that a legal agreement is required, and it also would trigger an additional procedural note to ensure that no consent would be issued if it was approved today until the Section 75 is signed. So the aim is exactly the same, which is to ensure the delivery of the site restoration over the lifetime of the development. But instead of doing it by means of a condition, it would be by means of a legal agreement.
Sorry, Councillor Simpson, can we go through the application? Okay.
My experience of Section 75 is they sometimes take a long time to agree. Have we any idea how long this might take, or if it's going to delay things in any way?
I'm always a little bit defensive when that observation is made. I can give a committee an assurance that will progressed expeditiously by the Legal Services of Perth Kinross Council. What I can't do is speak for the prioritisation of the applicant and or his solicitors. We do normally cover ourselves by saying that we would expect it to be complete within 4 months be satisfied that it was being progressed in that sort of timescale, and if we had reason to believe that the applicant was not committed to reaching agreement with us, then we would reserve the right to refuse the application as being non-compliant with policy. I think, though, in this case, there's every reason to believe that it's a relatively minor matter. We've brought this to the attention of the applicant, and we're confident that it should be completed within a short time scale.
Councillor Gray?
Perhaps the applicant's representative would wish to speak on that.
Maybe at the end, if we go through it, they're here to answer questions.
Yeah, if it's possible, we could go through the application first. Thank you.
Okay. I'll try this by just speaking. If you can't hear me, let me know and I'll go across there to speak. But if I move the microphone, hopefully that will be sufficient. This first slide shows the layout of the proposal. To the left-hand side of the screen, you'll see the brown-orange colour. Oh,
Sorry.
oh, now you can see nothing. Oh. Okay. We're back on. So to the left-hand side of the screen, that's the borrow pit area. No, we're still on. That's fine. Yeah. That's the area where the excavation will take place. The area further to the right of the screen is the asphalt plant where all the workings will be. So the only excavation area is the borrow pit, which is, as I say, to the left of the screen. The second point is taken from the old A9, and we're looking across in a southerly direction. To the left is the current A9, and to the right is the part of the site. And that first part would be the area of the asphalt plant. This next one, again, is taken from the same point, standing on the old A9, and we're looking westwards across the site. Okay. Right. Okay. So on this slide, you'll see, looking, as I say, westward right across the whole site. We'll move on to the next one in the hope of getting it slightly quicker. This is down in the southwesterly corner of the site, and we're looking eastwards across. In the distance, you can just see the slight hump, which is part of the scheduled monument, which is out with the application site. Okay. We'll just move on. We'll move on to the next one. Again, similar area down in the southwesterly point of the application site, this time looking northwards across the whole site. So this is really looking right across the borrow pit area. And on this slide, you can see the undulations that are already there as part of the landform. We're into the centre of the area, which is the borrow pit, so it's almost in the centre of the site. We're looking in a northeasterly direction. And again, you can see the existing landform, which would in fact screen, because that landform, the higher area there, would remain, and that would screen the area to a large extent from the northerly part. And finally, we're back to the layout. Thank you.
Well done, thank you. Okay, open it up to any questions. Has everybody followed the slides? Okay, there. Okay, open it up to questions. Thank you. Gentlemen, do you want to come forward? If you just come to the podium, that's great. And if there's any questions from the committee, they will ask. Can I ask who's who? Thank you. Okay, and I open the floor to any questions. Do we have any questions today? Councillor Simpson?
Well, I'll carefully rephrase my question, bearing in mind Mr Fogg's blood pressure, and ask the gentleman if they can give us a categoric assurance as regards to Section 75 that it's their intention to sign it as swiftly as possible. The reason I ask is that we all have experience of some developers, not yourselves, I hasten to add, who take an inordinately long time to finally sign it, and I wouldn't want anything to delay this.
Yes, absolutely. We initially, on reading of the report, we had understood that it was going to be a planning condition that would ensure restoration. We've since had discussions with the planning officer earlier this week, and we've agreed that Section 75 mechanism can also work. We will be on the case with this straight away, because we won't get our, provided we reach an approval today, we won't get our planning consent until we sign a Section 75, so we'll be taking this forward with some urgency.
Content that may have a supplementary, convener.
Indeed.
But just ask again, could you advise us of any other site where reinstatement has taken place that any of us could have a look at?
Absolutely. I think the best example would be at our Powmar quarry, which is up near Glams and sits within Angus Council. And we've got a progressive restoration scheme there. And we're in phase 4 of a 10-phase development. And already we've returned about 7 hectares of land back to agricultural use. And it really is a prime example of what we can do.
Councillor Coates?
I just have a question with regard, it's covered in paragraph, section 27 of the thing, but it's just a question that if any significant archaeological discovery is made in the initial excavations of the site, would the project be suspended until sufficient time has been given to fully investigate, because it is there are historic sites in the area. Would sufficient time be given to fully investigate the archaeological discovery?
Yeah, effectively we'd submit an archaeological written scheme of investigation, or archaeological consultants would, which would provide for a mechanism by which the Perth Kinross Council Archaeology would be able to liaise with ourselves and our archaeologists, and everything would stop until we were, we'd done what was required by the council's archaeologists effectively.
Okay. Abby? Councillor James?
Thanks, convener. I remember this coming to us in principle before, and locally people were concerned about the timescale. I understand this is for the Lunkety to pass a Birnam dueling, and the concern was that this would remain open for future projects further up the A9. Can we be assured that this is purely for the Lunkety to Birnam? And is there, I can't see a timescale, for our officers.
Yeah.
Can't see a timescale in the conditions.
Well, it's a 3-year development maximum, and the way that we can offer reassurance on that front is that as part of the design for the dual A9, the access that we're going to take to get to this borrow pit will be closed on the end of the construction job. And the volume of material that we have applied for is fairly limited and is intended to serve that leg of A9 dueling only. So that should be sufficient reassurance for the residents that the scheme is very much short term and specific to A9 dueling on that stretch.
Mrs. Codley?
If I could just come in there to clarify matters as well, you will note proposed conditions 2 and 3. Condition 2 is limiting the development to 3 years. from the commencement of the development, and condition 3 limits the amount of sand and gravel that can be taken out. So both those things would actually allow what you're asking for.
Okay. Any further questions? Gentlemen, thank you very much indeed for your time today. Okay. Are there any comments on the application? There's no comments. Okay. Do we have a motion on the application? Councillor James.
I'm happy to go with what's before us, convener, with the change which was suggested to us by Mrs. Conliffe earlier in the commission.
Okay, do we have a seconder? Councillor Simpson. Okay, thank you. And are there any amendments to the application? No amendments, then in that case the application is approved. Thank you very much indeed. Right, thank you. This brings us on to the next application in front of us. Okay, this is an installation of a underground tank and a replacement of forecourt lighting in retrospect at Young's Garage, Perth Road in Birnam. I just want to say we do have some deputations on this. I'll just get my little list. We will be hearing from a Mr. Douglas and a Mr. Turner, and Councillor Lang will be also objecting, and we have the applicant here, Mr. Stuart Riley. Okay, can I open this up to Mr. Niven to introduce the report?
Thank you, Convener. Yes, many of you will be well aware of this site because the petrol station has stood in operation in this site for many, many years, and until recently was manned by the adjacent garage. However, a recent change in operation of the garage has resulted in the fuel station being operated independently from the neighbouring garage itself, with automated pumps installed along with new forecourt lighting and an additional underground interceptor tank. The garage has also been operating recently on a 24-hour basis with forecourt lighting on throughout the night. Full planning permission is now being sought in retrospect for the installation of the forecourt lighting and the new underground tank. The applicant has acknowledged concerns expressed in relation to the 24-hour operation, and following a review of their operations, they are now proposing to reduce the operating hours to between 7 a.m. and 11 p.m. This report proposes that this can be controlled through conditional control of the lighting, which will ensure that the forecourt lighting remains off between the hours of 11 p.m. and 7 a.m. This is the only still that I have of the site. It shows a view looking from the Perth Road, looking northwest. As you can see, the site has quite a close relationship with the surrounding residential area. The closest properties being seen there in the background of the image itself. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, if I could ask for the first objectors to come forward. As I say, that would be Mr. Douglas and Mr. Turner. Gentlemen, thank you for coming today. Jointly, you have 5 minutes. You will be notified with a minute left to go, and the floor is yours.
Thank you, Convener. Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Turner, Nigel Turner. I live directly opposite Young's Garage on the Perth Road. A record of sleep disturbance between the hours of 2200 and 0700 and other related events was kept by my wife and myself from July last year to July this year. Copies of the record were sent to Planning, Environmental Health and our local MSP at roughly 3 monthly intervals. After 6 months, the results of the analysis of the record were provided to the Dunkeld and Birnam Community Council. The results of the analysis are as follows. During the 336 nights that we were at home, we were disturbed on 163 of those nights. the number of disturbances totalled 234. So the percentage of the nights that we were disturbed was nearly 50%, or to put it another way, we would expect to be disturbed at least once every other night. Now, please note that a disturbance to sleep can be caused by revving engines, slamming of vehicle doors, fuel pump noise, loud stereos, human voices, and on one occasion, the shrieks of inebriated young women and the slamming of car doors prior to urinating on the forecourt. The decision to shut the petrol station from 11 p.m. to 7 a.m. is welcomed, and it will reduce disturbance to the immediate neighbours of the garage. But as the attached chart shows, and you might be able to see it at a distance, what I've plotted is time from 10 o'clock to 7 o'clock, and number of disturbances.
Sorry, I could ask you to articulate it rather than that, because we don't have any, we don't,
Okay.
papers are not admissible, but if you could articulate what's on that, that would be great. Thank you.
Right, all I was going to show was that although reduction in disturbance would be significantly increased if the garage was shut from 10 to 7, it would be even more significantly increased if the garage was shut from 9 p.m. to 7 a.m. To conclude, in an ideal world, we would like the garage to revert to its original hours of 9 to 5, but realise that this is unrealistic. Closing the petrol station from 9 p.m. to 7 a.m. would be an acceptable compromise, particularly for those who have to make an early start or those who have young children. It would also remove the community council's concern that the garage would become a meeting place for those leaving bars and restaurants. Thank you. I'm happy to answer any questions. Yes, Mr. Douglas has his own presentation.
Yeah, I'm Neil Douglas, and I stay immediately adjacent to the garage, to this site. I thought I was going to have a bit of more time this morning with this previous proposal, previous planning application that was on the agenda to finalise my delivery, but I noted that it went through rather quickly, or quicker than I anticipated. I want to first of all say that this site, this wee rural context that we stay in, is adjacent to what used to be a quiet rural garage, and it fitted the circumstances of the village that we stay in. And I've noted
sorry,
down...
so you have 1 more minute left.
Okay, I noted down so many factors to raise here, and it looks as though the minute I've got left, I'm not going to be able to do it. But I might try and turn quickly then to a submission that my daughter made, and it might help summarise some of the areas that I wanted to raise, and it might also catch the imagination of folks here and maybe help them make a fuller informed decision. My daughter writes, I've just successfully completed the first year of my art and design degree course, and I've learned much about the impact of poor quality lighting, overexposed lighting and inappropriate lighting. My course has also introduced me to construction design in domestic settings and the effect that design has on the health and quality of people's lives. My bedroom window is roughly 15 metres from the downlights and from the canopy, which overhangs, virtually overhangs the garden of the immediate residents. I'm going to have to scroll through this to meet your minute. I'll go down to our additional concerns. Of course, there are noise concerns, but she also has safety concerns. I'm also worried about the fact that this garage is unmanned at night. There's no evidence of on-site security. who's going to deal with the serious potential hazard
I'm sorry, Mr.
that may
Douglas.
arise?
Mr. Douglas, we have to wind up. I have given you some extra time, so
Yeah.
if you could wind up, please.
Okay. So, in winding up, we're looking to reflect what Lindsay has to say, what the neighbours have to say, and it is about, yeah, let's continue with a decent service in a lovely garage, but not from 11 o'clock to 7 o'clock in the morning, 11 o'clock at night to 7 o'clock in the morning.
Thank you
but
very much.
Certainly drawing
Thank you.
it back to 9 o'clock perhaps, and maybe
Apologies,
looking at
but
a
you
weekend.
have had a little bit of extra
Sorry,
time, so
that.
I do understand that. Could I possibly ask if you both come back, if the committee would have any questions? Does the committee have any questions before I've asked anyone to come forward? Councillor Gray.
Yep. Thank you for your presentation, gentlemen. Do you accept that local people do use this garage?
Absolutely.
Right. Do you accept that the economies of running a garage perhaps predict that they need to maximise, wherever possible, the hours which they're open? This is perhaps one reason why the existing garage owner stopped doing the petrol himself. He just found manning it for that short period he couldn't justify, and perhaps that's why a large concern are now trying to do it economically with extended hours. If that's the case, do you appreciate that it's a case of use it or lose it, or maximise the hours or lose it? I can instance a case where I do know of a very busy town, much bigger than, I'll say it's Dunblane in fact, who had a garage, and it's no longer there. And Dunblane is a large community. They do not have a garage. And this happens simply because it's a case of, it's easier to nick into, let's say, in this case, easier to nick down to Inverarmond than it is to use the local one because it's not there and it's only open at a certain hour of the day and it doesn't suit me. So it's a case of, it's a compromise between what is satisfactory for, yes, yourselves as very near neighbours to it, but there is the broader context needed to be considered, and that is that, look, there are other people in the village. It's a commuting village. It's not the rural village it once was. None of them are anymore, I'm afraid, or very few are, and that's why, you know, garages are more important to more people in the village. Therefore, do you accept that maximising the hours to keep it open is an important issue?
In essence, no, because I think you also have to consider the loss of residential amenity that implies, and having had a look at nearly all the garages from Perth to Aberfeldy, I can think of none that are so close to residential properties, and they literally is within 10 metres. And I think, as residents, we have the right to have a decent night's sleep that is undisturbed. Thank you.
Yeah, sorry, that's an excellent question, and it's a good point, a number of points that you've raised. But the principle that we have is one where it's disturbance. It's disturbance of the quality of life that you as a council, Scotland through its SSP, the pay plan, the mission statement of the authority. It's all about upholding the quality of life and improving the quality of life. And this has had some serious impact on the quality of life of especially the immediate residents. But if we look to the detail of the usage of the site as it stands, that's a 24/7 for the last 14 months. We're not conjecturing here. There's no imagining, there's no maybes. This is a reality, and it is, I mean, if you want to have a knock at your door at 2 and 3 in the morning asking if you can use a toilet because there's no toilet facility, for instance, or when you witness, or your daughter witnesses folks smoking in the forecourt at 2 and 3 in the morning, or you witness loud music and blaring and hen parties and men parties meeting there during the night, relieving themselves in your adjacent access area and in your garden, you start to think, wait a minute, there's some serious disturbance going on here too. What was a quiet. The topography of the area is important to consider as well. It's like a cauldron of silence. My daughter put that in her submission. It's like a cauldron of silence. So you've got to be there to understand what this is like. But the usage, and the usage is one where I can speak quite authoritatively about. I've been off work for 9 months during that 12-month period with a condition. And so, therefore, I've had sleep issues. And I was able to stay up during the night. And I can tell you, on average, there's 2 or 3 vehicles, on average, sometimes 6, sometimes 1, sometimes none, between 11 o'clock and 6 o'clock in the morning, for instance. So there's not a big demand either locally or nationally of the A9 for this facility. So that's a point to reflect on with your good question. But it's 11 o'clock. We would be proposing that you would bring it back to an earlier time. Of course, it did operate in the past from, on average, during the winter, it would be 8 o'clock in the morning to 6 o'clock at night. At the weekends, it would be 9 o'clock to 5 o'clock. In recent times, the old garage operator operated a little bit less than that. This is 2 businesses now operating. It's a car maintenance business. It's 2 separate businesses. The forecourt's operated by a national company, Certas. The local one, the maintenance, car maintenance, car sales, car wash is operated by a local character. And it's good and well, and it looks decent, apart from this amazing canopy that you've got, which I would think, as a planning authority, you might think about withdrawing consent for such a intrusive, inappropriate design and structure. My daughter asked me to put that in. So maybe not as a joke, but as a serious reflection. When we've got a future plan, a local plan, looking at quality of life, looking at the structures for our community in the future, we want to make it attractive for executives. My wife, for instance, is an executive with this council. Well, put a sale sign out, so she said, a for sale sign, outside her house if this continues. If, for instance, there's a vending machine added, or if there's toilets added, or if it continues to become the meeting place and the disturbance, the nightly disturbances that we get with, but it's this intermittent nature of the disturbances that's a factor. It's the irregularity and the anticipation of doors slamming when you're waking up during the night.
I'm sorry, sir.
I'm going on too much.
Yep.
Thanks very much for the question.
Thank you, Answer. Thank you.
Do you have an answer, Councillor Gray? One second. I would like to ask a question, if that's okay, gentlemen. You're here representing, obviously, yourselves, but equally the community. It's my understanding that there is no time limit on the garage as it stands right now. The garage is legally allowed to operate 24 hours a day. These stipulations that are being put forward will help to minimise that. Is the community aware that the garage, without planning stipulations, could revert back to a 24-hour-a-day without the council being able to do anything about it?
Yes, and this matter was discussed at the Dunkeld and Birnam Community Council, and they're still proposing that the hours are, the garage is shut from 9 p.m. to 7:00 for reasons that they gave in the report which you have. Does that answer your question?
Yes, it does. I just wanted to know if the community was aware that if we were minded to refuse this application, it could revert back to 24 hours and there would be nothing the council could do.
Which is why I think we're suggesting that there must be a compromise. We welcome the fact that the company is proposing shutting the garage from 11 till 7. What we're saying in terms of sleep disturbance, residential amenity, it would be far better if it was shut earlier.
Sorry, I don't know if we've made it clear. I don't think we're objecting to a garage and objecting to an operation. It was just the 24/7 aspect of the operation, the unmanned aspect of the operation as well. But obviously, we want a reduced hour. We're not objecting to the functioning of a fuel station.
Okay. Yeah, so it's a reduction in the
Yes,
time.
yes.
Okay.
And so,
Convener, can I?
Certainly.
I think there is another thing here, another issue. One reason my wife would not attend today is the fact that she is so angry by the way this whole issue has been handled. Had there been information from the previous owners, they would not give any information about what was going on. We then had a 6-week construction period, having been told it would be 2, and despite emailing and writing to Certas, there was no response whatsoever.
Whilst I understand that actually isn't within the realms of the council.
I know, but what I'm saying is, had there been consultation, I think we wouldn't need to
in
be
this position.
sitting here now.
I accept that. Thank you very much for
Thank you.
voicing it. Councillor Coates.
Would you accept, gentlemen, that the A9 is one of the major trunk roads in Scotland? The refuelling facilities are quite limited, and this is an important facility on this trunk road. And the fact that, you know, I believe that it should be open 24/7 because the road is used 24/7 and very heavily used. And it's possibly a lifesaver.
well, I'm not really sure whether that isn't in fact the case. I think if you were residing in Birnam, you would know that it's not heavily used 24/7. You would also hear with myself this cauldron of silence, and it goes on through the night. And the idea of this intermittent, irregular disruption is the factor that I tried to stress earlier. But I don't, forgive me, but I don't agree that it's heavily, there's a heavy course of transport on the A9 24/7. It is used 24/7, but it's not heavy. However, we've got filling stations, 24-hour filling stations, only a 15-minute drive away. There clearly is not a demand. There's not a demand for a 24/7 garage in that village.
Okay, thank you very much indeed. Is there any other questions? Sorry, Vice Convener. No, apologies. Councillor Braun.
Thank you, Convener. We were talking about disturbances. Obviously, in the middle of the night, you're presumably in bed asleep. Slamming car doors, stereos. How can you be sure they're related to the garage? There could be your neighbours coming back occasionally, slamming the door or having the stereo on. You
I
can't.
can assure you, living 10 metres away, they are not neighbours.
Okay. Okay.
And can I just say one other thing? We had lived in harmony with that garage for 29 years, and it is only the past year that we have experienced significant disturbance, particularly with our sleep.
And what do you put that down to then?
The fact it's open 24/7, whereas it used to be open effectively from 9 to 5.
Okay. Absolutely.
Just a couple of things. So when it was open, you mentioned 8 till 6, I think, and you mentioned 9 till 5. I mean, how long ago was that? Is it?
A year ago.
Just a year ago. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay. Councillor James.
Thanks, Convener. I understand this isn't just a noise issue, this is a light issue from the new canopy, which is probably affecting you gentlemen. Bearing in mind what the Convener said just now regarding, you know, the conditions that if all else fails, they still have the right to go back to 24-hour. Would perhaps you're suggesting that a 9 o'clock closing or turning off of the lights would be more acceptable to you? The owner is saying 2300. Would you be happy with a compromise between the two, say 2200? which would maybe more acceptable to both parties.
That would be the worst case scenario. Can I just say that I think what we're fed up with, and it's particularly around the hours of 10 and 11, you get people coming out of bars and restaurants, which they've got every right to do. But we're fed up with them peeing up against the sides of the garage walls, alongside our hedge, and making a noise. And in the best will in the world, if young people are using it as a meeting place, what on earth is going on there? Does that answer your question?
Yeah.
Okay, supplementary. Okay.
Yeah,
Yep.
thanks, Convener. Yeah, it does sort of answer my question, but my point being, whether it's open or closed, it might well be a meeting place. I'm just looking for something which, as somebody looking at a planning decision here, a condition is there some sort of compromise that works for everybody?
Well, it makes an excellent meeting place because it's so well lit. I mean, it's a carbon copy of the petrol station they have at Licks Toll, near Killin. And you can see that from about a mile away. I think that's the problem.
Yes, sorry, can I add something there too? The idea of the planning authority, for me, is that it's got scope to guide, it's got scope to recommend, and this is the scope that I think they're taking today. The report suggesting to the current leaseholders, Certas, to consider the neighbourhood, consider the quality of life, take on board our future plan, our current local plan, and the TAY plan, the future plan, the SSP, which stresses the quality of life, it stresses improvement for community. And with respect, I see this as a detriment, as a deterioration of the quality of existence in that quarter because of its topography and other things as we've spoken about. But the idea of the hours that you're proposing is good and well because it looks as though the authority are attempting to persuade the planner, the applicant, to pull back and think about the neighbourhood. If Certas or the current owners were good neighbours, they would be thinking that as well. Like ourselves, we want to uphold the quality that is there and we want to help improve it. And we've seen this as a major deterioration. So, yes, bring it back to 11 o'clock, please. Yes, even consider 10 o'clock. Perhaps even a weekend arrangement, but that is even less. But we've certainly don't want the rejection of this proposal outright, and we would like a garage, yes. But you cannot tell me that there is a market between 11 o'clock and 6 o'clock in the morning. It just is not there.
Okay, gentlemen, thank you very much indeed for your representation today. Thank you.
Thank you, Convener.
Okay, if we would like to move on now, the next deputation is Councillor Lane. Councillor, you have 5 minutes and you'll be notified with a minute to go. Thank you.
Thanks. When I came to this meeting, I wasn't intending saying very much, but I've been very concerned with what I've heard today. Some of the questions and answers. It seemed, Convener, that you were suggesting that whatever the local authority decides, they can go back to 24 hours anyway. So we're not really, I don't know what we're achieving here today. If whatever we decide or condition we put on, Certas can go back to 24 hours. So I find that concerning. I note that this planning application comes in retrospect in paragraph 2. It comes before us only because after an investigation by the planning enforcement team. So obviously there must have been issues of planning enforcement where it had to come and bring this before us. So I would think that if the Certas were to go back to operating these hours, there would be continually phone calls to environmental health, and we'd have to go out and monitor it and do it through an environmental health way of achieving peace and quiet for the residents nearby. My friend, Mr. Gray, Councillor Gray, his supposition over why the garage closed and changed its thing is only supposition. It is not actually a fact. Somebody that's lived in the area all the time. The previous owner retired and let out the business to another local business for doing MOTs and repairs and that. And he let out the forecourt to a national company. This company did major repairs, etc. I called into the planning department, was told that grandfather's rights, basically. They didn't have to get in touch with the council at all. This involved much more lighting, digging out of foundations, etc. No planning control, no building warrant, apparently. Hopefully we'll hear when the officers are questioned why this happened. To the actual building itself and the thing, I've not heard from anyone who does not think that a fuel provision facility is necessary and desirable in Dunkeld and Birnam area. Also from experience in a previous life, I know how difficult it is to make a profit selling fuel. I've attended Dunkeld and Birnam Community Council when this application was fully discussed and agree with the points they make in paragraph 34. The only contentious issue in this planning application is hours of operation, i.e. 7 o'clock until 11 o'clock every day of the week. I would like the Community Council's proposal, along with the residents' proposal of 7 o'clock until 9 p.m. to be adopted. There has to be a balance between the negative effect that residents have to bear and the benefit to the community. And I think that 7 to 9 p.m. would be a balanced outcome for Dunkeld and Birnam. This facility, I don't think the one still that we had did justice to how close this is. It was not done at night. It was done in daylight at a long photo shot lens. You're not, unless you're actually going to go and visit the thing, at night, when the lights are on, when people are there, you have no idea to have a feel for what's going on there. To Councillor Coates' point, it's not on the A9, it's off the A9. When the A9 is dual, there may not even be access to it that way. You may have to go a long way around to get. I don't think it is necessary, definitely not to be 24-hour service. If you visited it and saw it on site, you would get a feel for it. I don't think that you, listening to the questions and listening to the convener, I know that she's restricted, I don't think you have a feel for how close this is to the buildings. I've been in there when the lights are on. Councillor James will have an idea. It is right next door. To have it, if you, in the hours of darkness in the winter, if you want to go, if you start work at 7 o'clock and you go to your bed at 9, doors slamming. This is a facility only for a fuel station. It doesn't have a cafe. It doesn't have toilets. It has nothing else.
You have 1 minute left, Councillor.
So you're saying that this should be open, only closed from 11 o'clock to 7 o'clock. There's nothing else for people to do there apart from get fuel. If it was manned, if there was a shop, you could understand it. But so you get 1 or 2 visitors between 9 and 11. But that means people are woken up and disturbed twice. People in this weather cannot have their windows open. They're as closest from me to these people at that end of the room, with doors slamming, music and that, at 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock in the evening. That's what these people are up against. And I've got a lot of sympathy with the firm. I'm glad they've taken on. I'm glad that they've put in automated pumps. I'm glad there's a facility there. I use it myself. But I think we have to have a compromise. And I think the Community Council, the community are all on board with this. There's been no consultation. I didn't see Certas at the Community Council meeting. I didn't see Certas coming and speaking to residents to find out what they wanted. They've imposed this, and I feel that they've only drawn this back.
Could you wind up now, Councillor?
Okay, I think they've only drawn this back because of the pressure put on by environmental health and plan enforcement officers bringing this case.
Thank you, Councillor. Do we have any questions for Councillor Coates?
Can I make a comment rather than a question, Convener?
Can we do questions first, if that's possible? Are there any other questions? Councillor Simpson.
Councillor Ling, in your experience prior to Certas taking over, were there any public concerns about the petrol station being there? I'm thinking of the public urination and the mucking about and all the other ancillary things rather than the sale of fuel.
Absolutely not, because there was a shop there, it was a manned station, they were under the same ownership, so the toilet facilities were open all the time the garage was open. It was, so it was a combined business. So there was absolutely no problem. If there was trouble or any antisocial behaviour, there were people on site to deal with it.
Thank you. Okay. Your comment, Councillor Coates.
I am extremely familiar with the A9, Councillor. I travelled up and down it for 2 years whilst working at House of Brewer. I know the road like the back of my hand, and Dunkeld Birnam is an important stopping off place for everyone. And to say that the road isn't used 24/7, which has been commented before, it is. And I would support the opening of a garage, a petrol station at that location.
Coates, we haven't got to that part yet.
Obviously, I would like to respond to that because it is not on the A9. You have to drive off the A9 to get to it. And the proposals that are up for the A9 is dualling as to tunnel, possibility of tunnelling underneath there, which would make it even less attractive to come off to that site. Most people, if they've got fuel, will not come off at the A9, go into a village to get fuel. They'll carry on to Ballinluig, where it's a lot easier access to get into than to go to a station with no other facilities.
Okay, just for clarification there, are you implying then that once the dualling is done, there will be less people utilising the garage?
I have no idea. I don't know. I've not usage figures. If Certas may have usage figures, they should be able to tell you how many people use it between 11 and 7 and how many use it between 9 and 11. And that would be really helpful. But as I say, Certas have not brought any of this information forward to anybody.
To the community. Okay, we're dealing with the application in front of us. Councillor Jane?
Thank you very much, Convener. And a question, I've got one for officers. Okay, I can deal with that afterwards. Councillor Lang, as you know, the proximity of this garage to surrounding properties, are you aware of any safety devices or facilities for use of a night time?
I'm sure that these will all be there. I'm sure that it's a reputable company, and I'm sure that they will have, I don't know, fire blankets or oil spill or fuel spill facilities. I wouldn't question the ability or the way that the company would be taking this forward. I'm quite convinced of that. It's all down to the negative effect on the residents, the fact that there's nobody on site. Whether people smoke on the facility, that's crazy, but it could happen anywhere. There's nobody to stop that. But I don't think it is the company's. I think the company will have all the bases safety covered, and I wouldn't call any of that into question at all.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Braun?
Good morning, Councillor. Antisocial behaviour and disturbance has come up with yourself and the previous deputation. I'm just thinking, with the lights going out, whatever time they went out, would that deter antisocial behaviour? It's still going to happen in that, people making noise, shouting.
Yes, I think it would, because if there's no reason to meet there, if the lights are off and there's no fuel, there are other places you could meet in the square in Dunkeld. You could meet anywhere. I think that because it's a light, it's like moss to a flame. There's lights there, you can see each other. There's plenty of space to park. You don't have to be buying fuel. It's a wide open space with light.
My thoughts are, from reading and experience in the past, these sort of things don't stop when the lights go out. If it's an area they're going to congregate, that's where they'll go.
I think it's more people. I don't know.
Are you sure?
Well, we don't know. None of us know. All I would say is that it would stop doors slamming, engines revving. The most noise a car makes is not when it drives past the main road. It's when it stops, it starts again and takes off. That's when the most noise is, and that's what's happening outside people's windows, within the distance from here to there. And I think that any reduction from 11, I would like to know how much that would impact on Certas's business, but we don't know the figures.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. We, as a council and a planning department, aren't actually in control of Certas and their business. So I accept the points that you have made, but that would be predominantly a lot of that was to do with them. But I will say we take on board what's been said, and I thank you very much for your time.
Thanks for your time. Thanks.
Right, okay, we're on to the, yes, we're on to the next deputation, which is the applicant, Mr. Stuart Riley. Oh, sorry, we have two. Sorry.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Stuart Riley from Certas Energy, and this is my colleague Brian. I'd just like to give him the floor for a few minutes for our initial statement.
Certainly. Can I say, gentlemen, that you will have 5 minutes as everybody else,
Indeed.
and you'll get a warning with a minute left to go. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Good morning to you all. My name is Brian Worrell, and I am the Corporate Affairs Director of Certas Energy. I'd like to make a number of points to you on behalf of the applicant. Firstly, some general points about the company, and then on to the site itself. The site will be operated under the PACE brand and operated by Certas Energy Limited. Certas Energy is a national fuel distribution company. It sells something around 6 billion litres of fuel a year, and in respect of the retail operations, it operates around 700 retail sites across the UK, of which 23 are exactly the same mode of operation as the site in Dunkeld. Certas Energy is part of a FTSE 70 company called DCC, which itself has extensive knowledge and experience of running over 1,000 unmanned service stations across Europe over many years. So both Certas and DCC are strong and credible operators of this type of service station. And indeed, through the Energy Institute, we are significant industry leaders in the standards by which this type of site is operated. In respect of the site itself, firstly, the other 23 sites that we operate all operate 24/7, and we have no issues raised either pre or post-opening relating to noise, light, or indeed anything else. We also recognise that there are many members of the local community here who have welcomed the newly refurbished site, which we believe benefits the community and provides an essential service. We've invested heavily in upgrading the Dunkeld location. We have added an interceptor, which is significantly reducing any environmental risk. With regard to lighting, we have installed modern LED sensor-controlled lighting, which is set to minimum lux levels and it operates to industry-established norms around the levels of lux. We've also put in place automatic number plate recognition and 24-hour CCTV monitoring, along with all the other emergency precautions that you would expect of these type of sites. And we've had no objections at all, in fact, support from both the petroleum officer and from the local fire and rescue service in relation to the site. Now, with regards to the opening hours, we do understand the concerns that have been raised around this. And if the consensus of this council is that it is better for us to reduce those opening hours to the period of daytime, in other words, between 7 in the morning and 2300 in the evening, then that is something that we would very much be prepared to work with, and we would accept the decision of the council and go along with that, albeit the point has already been made that, and I quote, there's no condition placed on the operating hours of that site. So this would be something which we would be willing to compromise on, and in the spirit of hearing the complaints that have been made today, certainly we take on board the points that have been made. The other point I would make, though, is that you need to set those objections within the context of the wider community from some of the welcoming support that we have had, and obviously that is something I think for you to be balancing. So, in summary, our position is that we would ideally still want a 24/7 operation, but if it comes down to operating between 7 and 11 in the daytime, and if that is to the wider benefit of the local community, then that is something that we would be prepared to work with. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I'll open it up to questions. Do we have any questions? Councillor Gray?
Thank you, Convener. Can you tell me, has the canopy always been there as long as you've had it, or was it there, or did you put it there?
Stuart?
Yeah, the structure itself's always been there. We did carry out some undersheeting and we did install new LED lights whenever we took the lease upon.
Is there any way a screen to, is there a height limit to such a canopy, by the way? That's an important thing. You know, what do trucks to deliver the fuel have to under whatever canopy is there?
Yeah, there are. We have different sized trucks. So, for example, we can have an Arctic truck, which is obviously higher. So, depending on the height of the canopy, that depends on which sort of trucks we would put in for delivery. You know, for any of the sites that we have leased across the network, we don't find that we have to build a new canopy because they are still set by certain regulations in the initial build.
And the canopy is decided by the height of trucks, really? Is that what you're saying?
Sorry, can you say that again? Sorry.
Is the canopy height, elevation of the lowest part of the canopy, decided upon by the height of a truck that goes in there?
Yeah, to allow truck entrance. If we were to build a new canopy today, for example, we would ensure that was the correct height to get a truck under the canopy, yes.
Okay. Okay, thanks just now. Thanks.
Councillor Simpson?
Thanks for your presentation. It's obvious from that CERTAS is an organisation that knows how to run filling stations and knows what it's doing. It makes it the more disappointing that you don't seem to, on this occasion, have fully considered the planning application until you've been made to do so. And you don't appear, from what we heard, to have done much in the way of public consultation. With hindsight, would you have done things differently in terms of the public consultation and the planning?
So certainly, I'll take the public consultation side of it. I spend quite a lot of time in various community meetings and indeed government meetings. That's part of my job and my responsibility. I wasn't aware until fairly recently of this issue in general, personally. I don't know whether representations were made to CERTAS and ignored or what. I mean, if they were, that's something we can certainly take up afterwards, because I would say in general that we have very good community relations and we want to work well with all stakeholders where we're engaged. And I'm personally disappointed if we didn't do it in this particular instance. But I think our position ultimately would be the one that you just heard. It would probably have come down to better engagement. The other point was, sorry, your other point?
The other point really was the planning application.
Yeah, I mean, it's quite difficult for me to comment on this site particularly. I'm now managing the Fuel Express network and have done for 6 months. You know, however, from what I'm aware on any sites that we do come across, you know, that isn't something that we do normally do is ask for planning unless need be.
So I think the other thing perhaps to say in general is that when we take over these service stations, there are certain rights that we operate within, and we normally would get on and proceed. And then if we hit any obstacles along the way, then obviously we deal with them. So, and that would be the same with the petroleum officers now. The petroleum officers have the ability to interject at any point, but it's for us to get on and do the work. So, but again, if there are any learnings for us in how this process has been undertaken, we're very happy to take that on board.
Thank you. I have another question, if I may. I'm very happy with that response. If we could turn now to the security of the site and perhaps some of the ancillary problems of public urination and possibly not operating the place correctly, in the event that, say, a nuisance of some kind, say a fuel spill or people misbehaving is caught on CCTV, can you give us an idea of what sort of action CERTAS might take?
Yes, of course. So we have 24-hour monitoring across the network, and it's a third-party company that we use called Metro Security. First of all, to address the spillage situation, there are spill kits on site, and you know, if there was any case of a spill, be it during working hours or at night time, the monitoring company would either be able to clock that on the camera, or they would be made aware by someone on site. They have their own emergency response plans to then either deal with it themselves direct, whether it be to contact the emergency services and shut down the site automatically on their side, or whether it's a more minor spill where they can direct either the on-site local caretaker or even the customer to help them out and deal with that situation.
Say a bit more about the caretaker.
Yeah, the caretaker is actually the guy who runs the MOT garage at the moment. So he is on site during the day within working hours. And he has an agreement with us whereby he has to be contactable 24 hours, 7 days a week. Obviously, if he goes on holiday or anything, then there's a substitute caretaker to take place there as well. So there's always someone who's able to tend the site locally within a matter of minutes, and that's something that we again address across the whole network. So although we do have the monitoring company, we also will have a body on site if need be.
Councillor Bad.
Thank you, Convener. Thank you, gentlemen, for your presentation. Can you give me some comfort on deliveries? We've concentrated solely to date about customers collecting fuel, but what about the deliveries of the fuel? Are you going to guarantee there will be no deliveries during the night?
Yeah, that's not a problem. We can do that, and we have done that across the network as well. Obviously, we route internally within Certas, so we can just set simple rules to explain to our routing department that we can only deliver during these hours. So that's something we're flexible on.
Councillor James.
Thanks, Convener. Thanks for your presentation, gentlemen. I'll ask you a similar question to the objectors. I've noticed or environmental health have suggested 0700 to 2300. If you had the opportunity to have dealt with the community previously, would there have been any leeway on the 2300? You know, would you have been willing to perhaps come back to 2200?
Well, whilst we recognise the concerns that are raised, our position would be that at some point, if we put a facility in there, it has to be economic from our point of view. And it's probably, I mean, you may know this in general, but over the 40 years ago, there were over 20,000 service stations in the UK. Today, there are 8,500. So these smaller service stations have been taken out economically, largely killed by the supermarket business. And what you have here with the unmanned sites is a different mode of operation, a different cost structure, which allows some of these smaller sites to come back into some of these smaller communities. But they are really dependent on relatively extended opening hours. So I do appreciate the points that are made by people who need to live very close to it, but from our point of view, we need a reasonably extended period of opening. And bearing in mind that, you know, people trying to use that facility need to have a confidence that if they try to use it, it's generally available to them, or they won't at all, then we would like to stick with the daytime operating hours that have been proposed.
Thank you. Yeah, Councillor Brown.
Just if I could follow on from that question, between 10 o'clock and 11 o'clock, bear in mind the location, it's not on the main A9. Is there that much business that time of night between 10 o'clock and 11 o'clock?
Well, I can't answer that specifically because I don't have the graph in front of me. Right. But I'm making the general point that, you know, when we invest in these facilities, and it's a fairly hefty investment for us to put that in place, we need to maximise the opening hours in order to maximise the trade that's available. I'd just make that general point. And in all of the other 23, that is a 24/7 operation.
I'm just on my mind thinking about the compromise with the local people. You know, just 1 hour, would that make that vast a difference?
Well, we think if we get to the point that that we accept this compromise, we think we've compromised from 24/7.
That's fine. Okay.
Thank you. Are there any other questions? Councillor Gray.
If I may again. The monitoring of the CCTV, has this revealed any untoward behaviour in the vicinity of this station?
Yeah, I must say I was quite surprised to hear about the amount of complaints, you know, from the residents themselves. I must say it isn't something that has been flagged up to myself. I will certainly speak to the monitoring company and have a look back on any footage, but generally when we do have incidents, it's reported into our administrative office, and then it's obviously escalated up to myself. So I haven't heard of these instances, but I'll certainly look into it on Certas side.
Councillor Simpson.
Thank you again. Can you just you refer to your other 23 similar sites. Could you give us an indication if they are quite so close to other residential houses as this one, and are they in such, no offence meant to Birnam, relatively quiet wee places like Birnam?
Yeah, I mean, we've got a whole range of sites across the network. For example, we've got 2 sites in Birmingham city centre, and we have other sites in rural locations, such as your Lux Tolls, Brora as well. And yeah, we do have sites that are also very close to residents as well. And again, we haven't had this sort of complaint.
Okay. Any other questions? Gentlemen, thank you very much indeed for your time today. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, and now open it up for questions to officers. Do we have any questions? Councillor Band.
Thank you, Convener. Much has been made of the fact that this application was picked up by the planning enforcement officers. In the event of us refusing this application, it does nothing, am I correct in saying it does nothing to alter the operating hours as the facility is operating at the moment, that the enforcement from the planning enforcement officer, or that part of it, merely relates to the tank?
Yeah, it is my understanding that as the current position is 24 hours a day, that they can, it wouldn't change the operating hours, but I'll pass that on to Mr Niven to respond.
Yes, that's correct. The actual business operating hours are not up for debate in a sense. That's not going to be able to be controlled. What has happened is they've replaced certain aspects, the lighting in this instance, which we considered to require permission, hence the reason the application has come in along with the tank. And by virtue of those lights, we can control when those lights go on and off, hence the reason why we can conditionally control effectively when the garage is operational, but we can't actually stipulate how the garage works itself. So we can't say the garage shall operate between these times. What we are proposing is that the lighting shall go on and off, which has been a particular issue with the local residents, the lighting, and that will also restrict the use of the forecourt, because I believe they can't use the forecourt for refuelling when the lighting is off. So in a sense, yes, we are controlling it, but without that control in place, for instance, if we refuse this, they could legitimately take, because these lights were put into the existing holes in the canopy where the previous lighting was, they could legitimately take those lights out, put the old lights back in and operate 24 hours if that lighting was effective.
Do you mind? So am I reading you saying that the mechanism for operating the pumps can be controlled by the lighting situation? I mean, anybody could go along with a torch and fill up if the light, just because there's no lights doesn't stop them filling up. But you're saying that, I know I should have asked the operators, but there's a mechanism there that if the lights are off, the pumps are off.
I believe that is the case. They cannot safely operate the forecourt without the lighting on. And from discussions I've had with the officer who has had discussions with Certas, in effect what they will do is they will restrict the timing as to when so the pumps will turn off when the forecourt lighting turns off at 11. They'll start up again because it's all programmed in, so somebody will come out and reprogram that, so therefore they come on and off at those times. That's my understanding.
Councillor Simpson.
Thank you. Really further to Councillor Band's point, can we ask then who it would be who would have the power to dictate the opening times? If we can do it sort of by default, but who actually sets these times? Or which organisation, should I say?
This application is to do with the lighting that's gone in, and we are putting control on that lighting. It's for them as a business to decide how they are operating 24 hour. There's certainly no restriction from a planning side of things in terms of how they operate, and if they decide to go 24 hours, if there isn't an original control on the original permission, which there isn't in this case, then there is no control. So they could legitimately change their hours. But the benefit of, if you like, about changing the lighting, it gives us an in to be able to control that without we wouldn't have.
Okay. Councillor Gray.
Thank you. Tell me, at what stage did the hours of operation suddenly jump from 5 o'clock in the weekend, 6 o'clock during the week, up to 24/7?
I believe it was around about 14, 15 months ago. It was around about a year ago, because I, in fact, fielded a call with the councillor and discussed this aspect, and I had confirmed personally that the operating hours were not a planning issue because we could not control that. So it was brought to our attention early on about the operation of the garage turning 24 hours, but we confirmed at that stage that that wasn't an issue. What wasn't clear was the other improvements that they'd undertaken to the garage itself. That is why this application has come forward, because the questions were raised about the 24-hour aspect. There wasn't so much question about the impact of the lighting, because effectively, as I understood at the time, it was the existing lighting that has been used. But obviously that has been clarified, hence the reason the application has come in.
But surely there's some sort of confusion along the way here. I mean, a village garage works and it closes at 6 o'clock during the week, and suddenly it's open there. No one granted that permission?
Because there's no control. As I said beforehand, there is no control over the operating hours.
In any garage?
Unless there was in the original permission. So say, for instance, nowadays when an application came in, we may consider controlling the operating hours. But many, if not most, garages throughout Perth and Kinross that have been around for 30, 40 years do not have constitutional control over the operating hours.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Can I ask Councillor Braun? I keep ignoring you.
You get me on the side. Just to clarify in my mind, going back to the point with regarding hours, 7 o'clock till 11 o'clock at night, what is our position if we wanted to change that condition? Can we do that, or can we not? Or back to 10 o'clock, I'm thinking in the back of my mind.
That would be for the conveners but to consider, but the councillors to consider, but I'll pass this one to Jeff.
There are certain tests against which conditions are judged, reasonableness being one of them. It's quite difficult, but you would have to see why, for example, 10 o'clock was acceptable in a way that 11 o'clock was unacceptable, or why 12 o'clock was unacceptable, 11 o'clock was. In this instance, you've had advice from Environmental Health, who feel that in terms of noise nuisance, they could support closure at 2,300 hours. It would be wrong to think it's in the gift of the committee to light on any hour they happen to choose. You have to be able to articulate why you've chosen a particular closing time.
Okay. Do we have any further questions? No. Thank you very much indeed. Right, so we are now, is there any comments that anyone would like to make on this application? None. Okay, then we're moving forward to ask if there is a motion. And we'll, Councillor Simpson.
Thank you. I think I would sort of almost reiterate Councillor Braun's question. I'm perfectly content to go with the recommendation, but I think we could articulate a good reason why the 2,300 hours should be changed to 22, given the comments about apparently drunken behaviour, urination, public urination, that sort of thing. I think we could reasonably say that the nearer to normal closing time of licensed premises roundabout, if this closed a little bit earlier, and the words compromise and reasonable have been used several times by all the deputations, I think I would be happier if we could make it 22 for those reasons, because I think it's the unthinking behaviour of people who may have been enjoying them somewhere else, using the facility between that hour. And moreover, in terms of profitability, although that is not a concern of this committee, I'm struggling to see how 1 hour is going to make that much difference. So if there is a form of words whereby we can change the 23 to 22 and I get a seconder, I would happily go with the recommendation.
Just check that that's competent.
It's competent. It would simply be a case of substituting 2,300 hours for 2,200 hours in the appropriate condition. That's the only change.
Well, on that basis, then I'm happy to
Put forward the motion.
prefer that with the change to 22 for the reasons given.
Okay, do we have a seconder? Second, Councillor James. Okay, and do we have an amendment to that motion? Councillor Coates?
I propose acceptance of the paper as it stands with the 2300 closing time on the grounds that this could be a 24/7 station and the 2300 is a compromise.
And do we have a seconder for that? Councillor Gray?
Yeah, I'd be happy to second that as well. I think public health or our health experts have agreed that this is an appropriate time. I don't see that I'm in a position to argue against that. I'm slightly confused by Councillor Simpson's suggestion that anyone who's been drinking and needs to relieve themselves. Well, if you relieve yourself, if you need to relieve yourself after leaving a pub, which must have toilets in it, there's something quite strange, and I would suggest very rare for somebody to need to do that immediately leaving a public house. So I don't know that I value that comment very much.
Thank you very much. We have a motion and an amendment. Simpson, would you like to sum up, Councillor Simpson?
To waive that.
Thank you. Okay.
Convener, the motion, as you know, is by Councillor Simpson, which is to approve the application in accordance with the recommendation in the report of handling, subject to amendment of the condition whereby the closing time is brought forward from 2,300 hours to 2,200 hours, and that motion is seconded by Councillor James. The amendment is by Councillor Coates, which is to approve the report of handling without such a change to the relevant condition, and that amendment is seconded by Councillor Gray. My colleague Danny will now take the roll call vote.
Good morning, members. When I read your name out, if you can state whether you're voting for the motion or the amendment as summarised by Mr Fogg there. So, Councillor Band. Motion. Councillor Braun.
Motion.
Councillor Coates.
Amendment.
Councillor Gray.
Amendment.
Councillor James.
Motion.
Councillor McCall.
Amendment.
Councillor Simpson.
Motion.
And Councillor Robertson. Yeah.
Convener, it's a tie at 4 votes all. You now have a casting vote.
Yes, I would go for the amendment. We have taken advice from the experts in their field as far as environmental health are concerned. They state that daylight hours is the hours up till 11 o'clock, and I am not qualified to go against that. So I accept that the amendment will carry. Okay, thank you, everyone. And now we move on to the last item of business, which is a proposal of application notice. This is Scone, a residential development at Wheel Inn, 37 Angus Road in Scone, and it is purely there for your noticing. But I will open this up to any basic comments. There is no way that the officers on the table can actually answer any questions because there's nothing no details to answer, but if there's any comments on this, I will open it up. Are there any comments? Councillor Simpson.
Thank you very much indeed, Convener. I am looking at page 54 and the paragraphs, particularly paragraph 3, policy CF3, which refers to social and community facilities. Colleagues will be aware that quite a lot of people live in Scone, and the present operation on this site, the public house, has a large car park which is used for a number of other community uses. The council itself, as you will know from the papers, has planning permission for a small recycling centre. It's used as a school drop-off point, and I understand that during the recent amalgamation of the churches within the village, the car park was cited as one reason to retain the use of the church just down the road. So the loss of the car park area, if not the existing facility, will cause some problems. And if I could refer to policy CF3, I would like some reassurance that we will take into account the availability of these community facilities if they have to be recited, and also to bear in mind where these alternative facilities would be cited, because there's not a huge amount of open or extra space within the village of Scone.
Okay, thank you. I'm basically stating that this is for notification. There could be no application actually ever comes forward for this, so it's very difficult for the officers to answer any questions on it. I don't know if that's...
Yes, as the convener has said, this is purely for noting, but I've written that down, and if an application does come in, then we will certainly seek to get some answers on that. The one thing I would say is, though, that what is done in terms of currently and who might be using the car park, you've got to remember in planning terms, the car park will be a car park primarily for wheel-in, and there will be no planning conditions on that to say that it should be used for X, Y or Z. So what happens in practice at the moment would not necessarily be relevant in terms of an application.
Further to that, we do at the present, the council has planning permission for the recycling centre, for instance. So would that make any difference to the use of that site?